Lucha Fight video, and here, what I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be the first in a multiple part series where it's basically a very long beginner's guide to keep it short, and this is the first part where I'm gonna talk about how to build your characters optimally for more or less PvE, because PvE content is more important in the game than PvP, although there are ways to build your characters for PvP, and I might go over that later. So the first thing you want to do is, you're obviously going to go to your team section. This is where you're going to find all of your characters that you play as. Now, as you can see, your roster can grow very wide, and you kind of need it to be wide, where you have multiple good characters, rather than just focusing on one specific character to build and make very good. So when you go to your character page, you're obviously, you know what, let's just take Venom as an example. He's my best character. When you look at a character, the first thing, now that you're here and you're looking at the character, the first thing you want to do with the character is you want to go to their details page. And in their details page, whoa, you can see all of these stats that they have. Like, all of these stats, and they all represent something. And right now I'm going to explain all of them to you, because it's a lot of statistics, and some of them might be confusing. So now, obviously, characters have HP and damage. Now, the damage, there's actually two kinds of damage. There's physical damage and there's energy damage. And it'll vary by character. And normally on a given character, it's whichever one is higher. Or you can check here, whichever one it lists here, that's the kind of damage that character does. There's also other stats. The most important stats, really, are going to be in this attack column, because that's really where you want to work on. So the most important stats are going to be, and before I actually get to the attack column, the one important stat outside the attack column is going to be reduced cooldown duration in this debuff area. You really want to make that as high as possible. I think the highest you can take is 50%. The other stats, the important ones in the attack column, are attack speed, which is basically how fast you can use your skills. I think the cap on that is 130%. Crit rate, which is how often an attack will do a critical hit. That cap's at 75%. Crit damage, that's just how much additional damage is dealt on a critical hit. As you can see here, that's capped at 200%. Ignore defense. So ignore defense is basically like it's basically a percentage of that you will ignore the target's defense. It just doesn't matter. Like, my Venom has 10,000 energy defense. So if I was an energy attacker with capped ignore defense, the highest possible value, which is 50%, I would ignore 5,000 of the energy defense. So his energy defense would essentially only be 5,000 rather than 10,000. The only really other important one is maybe ignore dodge. I mean, that's not necessarily every character, but that basically just ignores the dodge rate, which you can see on the defense stat. Dodge, it's just basically how your chance of dodging a given attack. So those are the most important stats you want to build on a character. Now, some characters do elemental damage, like you can see in the attack column. There's fire damage, cold damage, lightning damage, poison damage, mind damage. And those stats, those will vary, those will be very specific on characters, so let's not worry about that for the time being. So the ones you want to cap are cooldown, attack speed, crit rate, crit damage, and ignore defense. And you also want to work on a character's attack stats. Now, the next thing you want to look at is a character's gears. Now, each gear gives certain stats. Like, if you look at my Venom's gears, they all have some kind of stat bonus on it. Now, on stats that are based on a percent, rather than just a flat number, I think the plus, it basically just increases that stats percentage. I don't know what the exact ratio is, but it works like that. So you can see each of his gears has some kind of stat bonus on it. But more importantly in the gear is this fourth gear, because the third option on the fourth gear, you can change it to whatever you want. So on my Venom, I've set it to ignore defense, so that I can have that stat at higher, closer to the cap. Normally, so I can't actually show you auto change right now because I don't have enough gold, but you can change the stat to any stat you want, skill cool, or any stat available. So normally that's going to be skill cooldown or ignore defense, are normally the two you want to choose for one of the characters. I've chosen ignore defense on my Venom. Now this equip Uru function, I'm going to come back to this. This is something you actually want to do at the end. So the next thing you want to do on a character, I'm just going to go down vertically on the page, is you want to look at a character's skills. Now, skills are basically just what you're going to be doing with your character, your attacks, basically. So there are active skills and passive skills. So let's just look at the main active skills for a second. You have 5 active skills on any given characters, Plus, if a character has a tier 3 advancement or a like awakening and transcending potential, they'll also have a 6th skill. Now, what's important with skills is actually what skills you choose to upgrade, because each skill can go from level 1 to level 6. Now, for most skills, or for some skills on your characters, you're only going to take them to level 3. Like with my Venom, I actually made a mistake. I accidentally took 2 of his skills to level 4 rather than level 3, which is what they were intended to be. But these are skills that when you upgrade them, they only increase damage. Like this skill here, you can see as I upgrade it, the only thing that goes up is the flat physical damage. On this skill, again, it does have additional effects, but the only thing that actually increases is the flat physical damage. Now, however, some skills don't just increase damage, they also have other effects that are also buffed from an upgrade. For example, Venom's 2 skill, you see he has that decrease of all defenses. That goes up as you upgrade it. So that kind of skill, you want to take all the way to level 6. The Symbiote Web, the 4th skill, when I upgrade it to max, it increases the heal and the decrease of all defenses. So those are the kinds of skills you want to upgrade. Skills that give a buff, like for example, Venom's 5th skill. You can see it has that increased all attack, all defense, all speed, and crit rate. That's something that you might want to upgrade to level 6, because most of the time that buff gets boosted as you increase the skills level. So the skills you want to upgrade to level 6 are the ones that actually have an additional effect. Even if it just burn damage goes up, chill damage or poison damage over time, if like damage over time goes up, that's still just flat damage. So don't upgrade that. But if it has like an increased heal or an increased self buff or an increased decrease of all defenses or something like that, upgrade it. Get it all the way to level 6. That one's actually worth it. Then you also have passive skills on your characters. Like you can see, this is a passive skill that just happens passively. You don't actually activate it actively, really. This one's also a passive skill. This one just gives a stat bonus, as you can see. And then all characters also have a leadership skill. So the leadership skill is just like on your team of 3, the character you set as the leader, the middle slot, their leadership skill will activate, but none of the other characters' leadership skills will activate. So like, if you want, like the best leaderships really are just going to be straight damage leaderships. Like, let's see, who is a damage leadership? The Winter Soldier, for example. His leadership, living weapon, plus 30% physical attack. That's the kind of leadership you want to put on your team, because most other stats have caps, and you don't want to put a leadership that increases a capped stat, because most of the time you're going to have them pretty much capped. And the next thing you do after skill is type enhancement. Now, type enhancement, don't sweat type enhancement, because as you can see, the type enhancement will only apply against one specific other type of character. So with combat, it'll only apply against speed types it'll only apply against blast types, and blast types it'll only apply against combat types. Now, the one type it might be worth for is universal types, because for universal types, it applies to all types, aside from other universal types. So that's the one type it might be more worth for, but anyways, it doesn't change that much. It's only for one type, and it also has a chance to fail the upgrade. So don't sweat type enhancement too much. Next thing you're going to do is your ISO 8 set. So with ISO 8, basically, there's 2 parts of ISO 8. There are individual ISO 8, and there's ISO 8 set bonuses. So as you can see on this page, actually, let's go to this page. Each ISO 8 set, like these sets here, like Hawkeye, Power of Angry Hulk, they will give a certain stat bonus when you equip the ISO 8 in the right formation. So, like you can see, Hawkeye gives all attack, crit damage, dodge, cooldown, and then it has a activated damage effect. So, like that. Or, let's just say, Stark backing has all defense, max HP, crit damage, dodge, movement speed, and then a heal activated effect. So that's the ISO 8 set. Now, really, for any given character, there's going to be 3 ISO 8 sets you really want. Hawkeye, Power Ranger, Help, and Overdrive, the offense recommendations, because those are going to boost your important stats. Your crit rate, your crit damage, your cooldown, your all attack, your ignore defense, your attack speed. Those are the stats you want to cap. So those are stats you want to put on your ISO set. So you want to roll one of these 3 stats for most characters. Now, the other thing with ISO is the individual ISO 8 you equip. So now for most ISO 8, for the gray ISO 8, for the gray, red, blue, green, orange, yellow, and purple ISO 8, it just applies one flat stat bonus. Like, see, for this purple one, it's just physical attack plus 151. For this red one, all attack plus 163. For this blue, all defense plus 52. all defense 164, crit rate 174. And then now for chaotic ISO 8, the rainbow ones, they apply 2 stat bonuses, not rather than just one. Like you can see on this one, it has physical attack and dodge, all attack and dodge, all attack and dodge. So it applies 2 effects. And then you can also upgrade your ISO 8 as well up to 6 stars by basically just enhancing it and then combining it with either other ISO 8 or using boost ISO 8, which isn't actually ISO 8, but it just gives XP to your ISO 8. And so you can see you can get 6-star ISO 8 and then equip it. And then you can also awaken ISO 8 by leveling up your 6-star ISO 8 and then combining it with other 6-star ISO 8 to get red stars. Like, what's a good character? Rogue. On my Rogue's ISO 8, you can see I have 2 ISO 8s that have 6 red stars rather than 6 gold stars. That's because that ISO 8 is awakened. And it basically just gets a bigger step up. Like you can see this 6 red star physical attack is 274. And it also applies a better stage bonus to the ISO 8, because you can see there's stat bonus stage 5. That's based on the stars of the ISO 8 you equip. As you can see on this, the regular 6-star one, it's only 151. So by fully awakening an ISO 8, you can get double the stats. So it's pretty important. But the problem with ISO 8 is it's kind of RNG based, and it can take a lot of gold to roll a good step, but it's still worth rolling. So do work on your ISO 8. The next thing you're going to do with a character is you're going to give them a custom gear. So like for Venom, I've given him a double, it has 2 crit damage bonuses and then a damage activated effect. So now, when you're applying custom gear, or an obelisk really, that's what most of them are, you're basically just you're gonna get them to 6 stars by, let's take this, you can upgrade them and then combine them with other ISO 8. And then once the XP meter hits 100%, you can press upgrade, and then it gets to the next star, and so on until you get 6 star. Now, with ISO 8, there's a couple of with obelisks, there's a couple of main stats you want, and this is basically in order: guard break immunity, ignore dodge / crit damage, dodge, and then sometimes, but really not recommended, is crit rate. So, like, now for some characters, that's not always the case. Some characters just work better with success. Like with Venom, he works well with a crit damage obelisk. So I got lucky and rolled 2 crit damage stats on him. For somebody like Rogue, because she would work better with a guard break immunity obelisk. Now, the other thing with obelisk is that for some characters like Viper, because Viper does poison damage, it's best to give her a poison damage bonus rather than like a guard break immunity or crit damage, because that's just flat damage you can get, which is great. Now also, when you're getting the stats on your obelisks, you want to look for a damage proc. What's a damage proc, you might ask? That's a damage proc. That increased damage activated effect. This is not a damage proc. This is something a lot of noobs make as a mistake. They will equip an energy beam falling on the head and saying, oh look, a damage proc. That is not a damage proc. Do not keep that. You want to re-roll that as soon as possible. And to re-roll an obelisk, basically, you can just combine a 6-star obelisk with another 6-star obelisk, and the secondary stat and the activated effect will get changed. So you want to re-roll your obelisk until you have a good proc, and you want to make sure you have a good primary stat, which, like I said, guard break immunity, crit damage, ignore dodge, dodge. Now, next thing you're doing with a character is their uniform. Now, pretty much every character has a uniform. At least most of them have uniforms. And so now, what uniforms are incredibly important. Any character that has a uniform, you absolutely need to have their uniform for them to be at full potential. So, like, let's take my Venom uniform. I bought his War of Their Own uniform on the uniform discount event. So, not only do uniforms give you these flat bonuses, all attack, all defense, and also, once you get them to minimum rare quality, they'll also get option uniforms. Now, don't sweat the option uniforms too much, because those are only available if you actually need to have the uniform here. Like, if I upgraded my Venom uniform to rare, and I wanted to have the option uniform, I'd actually have to go out of my way and spend crystals on the Hawkeye's Ronin uniform And I don't want to waste crystals on that uniform just for the uniform option. So unless you're already going to buy the uniform just to build a good character, don't sweat too much about the option uniforms. More importantly about upgrading uniforms is you get this flat bonus, all attack and all defense. So that's important. But even more important with uniforms is the uniform effect. So not only will most uniforms give you a uniform bonus, where it'll either have an activated effect, like here it's 20% recovery max HP when I'm hit, and have some skill change effects. It'll like give straight skill changes. Like Venom's got 7 skills change. That's like a top to bottom rework. And all of his skills are changed, and that's what can make a character really, really good rather than being really, really bad. Because like, if you don't have the uniform, the skills will be much different. And normally when they change the skills, they make the skills better. So you always want to have the latest uniform for a given character so that you can maximize their potential. Now, after uniforms, the next thing you want to do, and despite it being late on the list, I cannot possibly stress how important this is having good cards. Now, with your cards, the reason cards are so important is because your cards will have permanent effects on every single character in your roster. Like if I click my view card effects here, these stats apply to every single character on my roster. Not just one, not two, all of them. And they're permanent, so long as I don't change my cards. So when you're equipping cards, the main stats you really want to roll are ignore defense, normally at around 25 to 30%. Cooldown, ideally 30 to 35%. And then all attack, physical attack, energy attack at really any value you want, because those have no caps. Now there are, of course, the other stats are also good. The other ones I talked about, like crit rate, crit damage, attack speed, and so on. These defense ones, aside from max HP and maybe dodge, they're not very good, especially the resistances. Resistances are trash. And now the third column, or fourth column actually, is activated effects. There are some good activated effects and some bad activated effects. Like this activated effect that I have right now is actually good because it gives me an increase in physical attack, so a damage bonus, which is actually useful. But there's some that are like increased movement speed or increased defenses. That's trash. Reroll. Like just change that. Reroll your card. Cards can be rerolled the same way as obelisks, by the way. You can just combine it with another 6-star card to change the secondary stats. Like if I didn't like these secondary stats on my Nebula card, and I mean, 2 of them are good and 2 of them are bad, so I may as well just keep it. I could combine it. I don't have a 6-star card, but I could combine it with a 6-star card, combine it, and then have those stats changed. So now with cards, there's 5 cards that are like super duper free to play friendly, and I don't know if I actually have all of them. And I don't. That are free to play friendly and are good. Now the 5 are these 4 that I have here: Uncanny X-Men 2018, Loki Agent of Asgard number 17, Groot number 5, and Avengers 318. The 5th one is actually the Star-Lord card, the one that has Star-Lord on its picture. The reason these are all good is because they all have decent stats, and they can all be acquired just like from farming Dimension Mission. Just by running your Dimension Mission daily, you can get all of those cards throughout the week. Other good ones you can equip, I guess, are the Marvel Zombies one, and the X-Force number 24. But try those 5 cards first. The other way you can get good cards is, of course, you can open, like, the other way to get even better cards, not just from the Dimension Mission, are in Legendary Battle. Let's go Legendary Battle for a second. In Legendary Battle, in the Ragnarok Legendary Battle, if you get Thor's Ragnarok uniform to Heroic and Loki's Ragnarok uniform to Heroic, you can get this Loki number 2 premium card. That's right, a premium card. And this one I already have that you saw, this Loki number 1 premium card. So there's 2 uniforms you definitely want to invest in if you can. The other way, and another important way to get cards, is through your Dimension Mission. Now, Dimension Mission, of course, you're going to run and you're going to get your cards. This is how you're going to get your cards, by running Dimension Mission. You're going to get your obelisks from running Dimension Mission. You're going to get your Uru from running Dimension Mission. We're going to talk about that later. You're going to get your chaotic, your ice, well, not just chaotic, all of your isolate. It's from running Dimension Mission, and then you're also going to get some, and assortment of prizes, Norn stones, XP chips, gear up kit, dimension debris, all that stuff. So it's really important. But what I meant is that specifically for cards is going to be from the comic card chest. You want to spend all of your tokens on this basically, unless you're trying to like tier 2 a very specific character that's good, like maybe tier 2 Black Bolt or Medusa or Moon Knight or someone like that who's really really good. Like let's show for example, I can exchange it. Bam! Look, that was actually really lucky. 2 4-star cards I just pulled just from opening that. And you want to open these every time. 2 more 4-star cards. There you go. This one was pretty bad, but you get the picture. You want to keep opening these. Another 4-star card. And you can get a lot of cards. Just remind this, okay, I've ran out. But you can see you can get a lot of cards from doing that. And then also doing the Ragnarok Legendary Battle. And then also doing... The last way is going to be from the premium chests. Don't sweat this. You can get maybe 1 premium chest a month. The one I'm talking about is the Dimension chest in the store. If you go to Dimension chest, this premium comic card chest, you can get about 1 a month, accumulating tokens from Giant Boss Raid if you run it with boost points, and you get 300 a month from the Future Pass to level the final prize. So that's cards. The last thing you're going to do with the character, this is actually probably the thing you should do last, after everything else, is going to be the character's Uru. And the reason for that is because you're basically using Uru to like top off the stats that you haven't quite capped, if you know what I mean. Like with Venom, for example, I've already capped that as crit damage thanks to my custom gear. And even though his crit rate isn't capped, this is actually something to keep in mind. Because of his 5th skill, which gives me 25% crit rate basically the whole time. Because my skill cooldown effect is gonna reduce the cooldown for this skill, I don't need to have the full 75% crit rate. I only need 50%, and it's basically already capped. So now, what stats aren't capped? Attack speed, physical attack, obviously, and ignore defense. Now, the key thing about Uru is, so before you actually equip your Uru, you can amplify your Uru slots. Now, I can't show you an example right now because I actually like my amplification as is, and because I don't have the gold. But basically, as you can see, let's just say on this ignore defense Uru, the base stat is plus 74, which is going to give like a little bit more ignore defense. But because it's in an amplified slot, I actually get that plus 98. So you get more than double the stat on a given Uru with the amplified slot. So what you want to do first is amplify your slots. Now, normally you want minimum 3 slots amplified. If you get 4 or 5, great. But don't aim for 4 or 5. Aim for 3 as a base. And then, when you're equipping Uru, normally what you want to do is, for any slot, put 2 of the character's attack Uru. Like on my Venom, I have 2 physical attack Urus right here. One of them is amplified, one of them isn't. So for all of my gears, 2 physical attack, 2 physical attack, 2 physical attack. You want 2 attack Uru on each gear depending on what character it is. If it's like Black Bolt or Thor or someone, you might want 2 energy attack instead, but you get the picture. Now, remember when I said skill cooldown is probably one of the most important stats in the game? This is where it's not. Do not equip cooldown Uru unless you're like 0.5% from being capped after everything else, after your custom gear, after your cards, after your gear, and rerolling your 4th gear slot. Only then, if you're like 0.5% off, if you're super close to being capped on cooldown, only then equip cooldown Uru. But otherwise, do not equip cooldown Uru because I think cooldown actually has a different rate of giving the buff, like based on this. Like the rate of the plus X to the percent that it gives is actually much lower. So you basically get nothing by equipping cooldown Uru. Instead, the Uru you want to equip is, like I said, 2 physical attack. Then you can equip ignore defense if you don't have that capped yet. You can equip crit rate or crit damage if you don't have that capped yet. And only equip it if it's not capped, obviously, otherwise it's a waste. But if it's not quite capped, you can equip these. And then you can equip attack speed if you're not capped on attack speed. So a lot of the time, instead of equipping cooldown Uru, you're going to wind up equipping attack speed. So like I said, most important stats on your Uru are going to be double attack, and then for the other three, crit rate, crit damage, attack speed, ignore defense, based on what's capped and what's not. And when you're looking at the cap, you also want to make sure you're taking into account any frenzy buff. So frenzy buff is like this. The plus 25, plus 25, plus 5% all speed, plus 25% crit rate. You want to keep that into account. Because even, not just for crit rate, like I talked about before, also for the all speed buff. Because all speed is movement speed and attack speed. It's like my Venom's attack speed is actually almost capped. Because even though it's only at 124% after factoring in my Uru and my cards and everything else I have, because I get that pretty much permanent 5% attack speed bonus from my frenzy buff, I don't need to worry about having my Venom's attack speed at more than 125%. Now the thing with attack speed actually is a bit different, because while you want to get the other ones as close to capped as possible while factoring in any frenzy buffs or any other buffs like accumulation or anything, which I'll talk about probably in a future video, not gonna lie, is with attack speed is the one you don't need to cap with all characters. Is it good to have it high if possible? Yes, of course it's good to have any stat high if possible. But really, attack speed, you don't need a cap. You just want, like, maybe, even for a really high level account, minimum 115% attack speed. The cap is 130, just an FYI. But minimum you want 115, factoring in everything. If you can get it to 130, great. But make sure, that's wonderful, but make sure you have everything else capped first, and then go for attack speed. So, yeah, that's pretty much how to build your characters. Now, the one last thing, actually, about building characters is you just want to make sure you know what all of your skills do. I already talked about skills, and I guess for Venom I kind of went over what all of his skills do just on accident. But, like, you want to make sure you actually know what the skill does, and that's how you can then go on and order your skills. Oh god, someone just entered my house. Ignore that. But you can actually see what, you want to make sure you know what their skills do. Not just what the skill looks like. No. The actual effect of the skill. So make sure you read all of your skills before playing a character. So with that, I'm probably just going to leave it there. I think I covered everything. Now, of course, there are other ways to build your characters aside from just this. There's, of course, you're going to star up your characters by getting biometrics. You're going to get their mastery to 6 stars. You're going to get the tier 2 advancement and the tier 3 advancement. You're going to upgrade their gears in the process from level 1 to level 25 and so on. But that's just kind of part of the process. That's not really part of building a character through this column. But yeah, I'm going to make more of these just generically as kind of a beginner's guide. This was just the first part talking about building your characters. I'm going to make more parts, like how to play characters and what game modes are good and stuff like that. But yeah, for the time being, see ya.